7 years ago, I, 35, adopted my niece, 9, from my sister, 26. My parents have health issues and could not take her in, so I took the responsibility. I love my niece and I'll never blame her for my sister's mistakes, but unfortunately, it uprooted my life. It caused a significant sidetrack in my career. I've even had to turn down better job offers because they wouldn't allow me to stay close enough to home. My parents love my niece, but could not take on the responsibility of caring for her, so I don't want to separate them. I had never planned to have children. I even had a boyfriend before I took in my niece, but he also didn't want to have children, and we made the decision to part when I took her in. We have never hid from my niece who her biological mother is, and even though the first few years of her life were hard, 3 years ago my sister started being in our lives again. She told me that she wishes for me to keep raising my niece because I have a better job and can afford it. My sister only has her GED and can hardly afford to keep herself afloat. She usually lives with her temporary boyfriend so she doesn't have to worry about paying for her own place. My sister acts like an aunt to her daughter, not like a mother, and my niece still loves her mother greatly. This past holiday we were at my parents to open presents and my sister gave my niece a present to open. It was a shirt that said, "I'm going to be a big sister," on it. We weren't sure what this meant, but my sister informed us that she was pregnant and that she wouldn't be able to keep it, and she was once again expecting me to take in the baby. My niece was so excited at the news and my parents were happy to hear that they were getting another grandchild, but I was just floored. I burst into tears immediately and I just walked out. My sister came in to talk to me and I told her that I wouldn't be able to take in the baby. I don't want a new baby. I love my niece, but raising her is enough responsibility already. My sister told me that I would be wrong not to take in my niece's brother. She didn't mean to get pregnant. Apparently she was on birth control and she doesn't know who the father is. My parents couldn't take on a baby either, so it's up to me. My sister told me that I should feel blessed, but I don't. When I told my parents and niece, they were all very upset, my niece especially. I don't know what to do, but I can't take in another baby. I know it's my niece's sibling and my sister's child, but it would completely ruin my life. Am I the asshole for refusing to take in my sister's baby after I took in her daughter?
Am I wrong for yelling at my brother at his daughter's funeral? So my brother, 37 male, married his high school sweetheart, but she sadly passed away during birth 10 years ago, which completely broke my brother, and he never recovered from that. Because of that, he fell into drug, alcohol, and gambling addiction and was unable to take care of his daughter. Let's call her Abby. Since he was unable to take responsibility as a father, my husband, 35 male, and I, 34 female, decided to take care of Abby shortly after she was born. We always wanted my brother to be involved, but he was usually too high to know what was going on. My parents tried to get him into rehab, but he would relapse every time. So we were the ones who saw Abby's first steps, her first swimming lessons, who walked her to school, and who bought her first bike. When Abby was 7, she was diagnosed with stage 3 leukemia. Nothing was too far away or too expensive to try, and we saw every specialist that we could find, and it got better for a while. At 8, she was cancer-free, but about a year later, it returned even worse. Again, we tried everything, but she just got worse. My brother visited her at the hospital once. I had taken my parents and my husband and I to get him there. He saw her and immediately left. 3 weeks later, Abby died. Both my husband and I were there and held her. The funeral was 2 weeks later and my brother showed up. He was clearly high and out of it and started yelling about how we had taken his daughter away and how we were the reason why she got sick and died. We were all very emotional, but I just couldn't believe he was actually that far gone. My dad tried to get him to calm down, but he just wouldn't stop. So as he tried to get my brother away from the crowd, I lost him. I yelled at him. How could he just abandon his daughter, his wife's legacy, and not even visit her in the hospital as she was dying? My husband stopped me, but I couldn't calm down. I was so hurt about what he said and hated him so much in that moment. My mother later told me off and blames me for ruining the service, and so does most of my family, and I think they are right. My husband has not said much since then, so am I wrong here?
Storytime about when I thought my laser hair removal nurse was complimenting my butthole. After lockdown ended in my country, there's been a huge sale at my local laser hair removal clinic, and so I thought, fuck it, I might as well go for it. I paid for my 10 visits and set out for the first one, a little nervous but excited for my new hairless body. Now, I decided it would be a great idea to get a full Brazilian, all the way down from the front to the back. Pretty normal, right? The lovely nurse comes in and gives me a brief heads up, explains how it all works sort of thing. When she comes back in, she decides that we're going to laser away the hair on my butthole first. All well and good, right? The instructions I've been given are, lay on your right side and use your left hand to pull up your bum cheek. So here I am, lying on my side, him pulling up my bum while this lady sticks a laser on my asshole. Now, on my left hand, I wear this gorgeous silver ring with a bright blue gem. It was handmade by my bestie's boyfriend, so it's pretty unique. So this lady saw my gorgeous ring and decided to break the awkward silence and said, "That's a cute ring you have there." And of course, I happened to forget that I was wearing the damn ring. It just made sense in my head that the nurse was complimenting the ring on my asshole. Yeah, I know. So, still on my side, I tell her, "Thank you, it'll be a lot nicer when it's hairless, lol." Cue the awkward laugh and then silence, until I realized that she was not, in fact, talking about my ass. We finished the rest of the appointment without speaking and I dash out of there as soon as possible. I'm still recovering.
Am I the asshole for making my mother apologize to a woman she called fat? Today I, 17 female, and my mother, 46 female, were going out for a walk. On our way home, we saw an old woman sitting on a bench. She was on the heavier side. My mother whispered to me, "Oh my God, look at that woman." I was confused because she was just minding her own business. She said, "Look at her legs, look at all that fat. I wonder how her knees can support her weight." I asked her to stop because it was rude and also we were close to her, so the poor woman surely could hear everything. However, she didn't stop. She replied rather loudly this time, "I hope when I'm old I won't become this fat." I was horrified, and by the woman's expression, she definitely heard my mother. She didn't, so I insisted many times, and out of ideas and in desperation, I went up to the woman and apologized for what happened. I looked at my mother, but she kept quiet and I was so embarrassed. Without much thinking, I said, "Mom, you have something to say to her, right?" She looked furious, and after a long time, she mumbled out an apology saying that she didn't mean it. She made us go home before we could even hear the woman's response. My mom was so angry and said that I put her on the spot and I humiliated her. She said, "What kind of daughter can do this to her mother?" and ended up crying in the kitchen.
Story time about how my neighbor is stealing my packages, stalking me, but denies everything. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I moved into a really nice apartment 3 weeks ago. It's a 1-bedroom apartment and the building has a bunch of amenities. There's even a doorman in the lobby. I felt super safe when I moved in, but 2 days after I moved in, weird things started happening. I'm lucky enough to make content for a living, which means I get sent a lot of packages to my apartment. On the second day that I moved in, my friends were over and helping me unpack everything. Suddenly, we noticed that my front door was open and 2 of my packages were missing. I locked the door and could have sworn that I had left the packages right there. I looked for them everywhere and couldn't find them. Later that night, after my friends went home, someone rang on my doorbell, but when I opened the door, no one was there. It happened a second and third time. Finally, I went online and ordered the Ring doorbell. I finally installed it, and you wouldn't imagine the things I caught on camera. 2 in the morning the following day, I see a strange man ring my doorbell and run away. This guy was in his early 30s, wearing a black hoodie, black pants, and he had a tattoo on his pinky finger. Couldn't really see his face though. When I saw the footage the next morning, I was really scared. I took it downstairs and I showed the guy at the lobby. He told me that it was probably someone who got into the apartment and not to worry about it. I mean, they always tell you not to worry about these things, but this is the kind of stuff that you do need to worry about. A few days later, I was expecting a package. I decided to go run some errands while I waited for the package to arrive. Finally got the text message saying that it was delivered to my front door. But when I show up to my front door, the package is not there. I go straight to my Ring camera and I see that the same guy had taken the package. I was furious. I went downstairs and showed the video to the guy in the lobby, and he told me to contact management. Called them, but they didn't answer, so I left an email. Sent them the 2 videos I had, but they took a week to reply back. Meanwhile, this guy continues to come to my apartment, ring the doorbell and leave, and steals most of my deliveries. Luckily, during Christmas, I flew home to be with my parents. Knew I wouldn't be receiving any deliveries, but I still kept watch of my Ring doorbell. At 1 a.m., I got a notification from my Ring doorbell that someone was there. It was the same guy, in the same exact outfit. He pressed his ear up against my door, trying to hear what I was doing. Woke up my parents, showed them the footage, and they were horrified. My dad called the building management, and he finally got through to them. He asked to get footage from the cameras in my hallways, but they told him that the cameras didn't work. Then my dad insisted that they find the guy who was doing this. Management said that they didn't recognize the man in the video. They told me that he probably didn't live in the building. My parents insisted that they change all the locks on the doors. They said it would be a huge inconvenience for them because it meant a lot of money, that they would have to issue new keys to every tenant in the apartment. That's when my dad told them that he would involve his lawyer, aka my uncle. The building management basically ghosted me and my parents, and eventually I had to go back to my apartment after the holidays. Told my parents I would be fine and that the guy would probably never come back. Boy, was I wrong. 2 days after I arrived back to my apartment, everything looked totally normal. My apartment building had a really nice gym, and that's where I would go work out. While I was on the treadmill, I see someone outside of the gym door, and when I saw who was standing there, I recognized him as the person in the videos. He was wearing a black hoodie and black pants. He wasn't looking straight into the gym, but he was hovering by the door. I literally jumped off the treadmill like a cat. Went straight to the door, but when he saw me, he started running away. I was ready to attack this guy. When I finally opened the door, he was gone. But this really made me angry. It meant that I was being watched at the gym and at my own apartment. It didn't feel safe. I was paying $2,500 a month for my 1 bedroom, but it didn't feel like a home. I decided not to tell my parents because I knew this would totally freak them out. Went back upstairs to my apartment and got ready for bed. At 11 p.m., I got another notification from my Ring doorbell. This time I could see him pressing his ear up against my door again, but this time I could see part of his face. He had a nose ring and a neck tattoo. I took a screenshot and sent it to my building management. That's when they told me that it could possibly be the person that lived in the 2nd floor. That they couldn't be sure and they couldn't really just show up to someone's apartment and accuse them of something like this. Because I'm so stubborn, I told them that I would handle it myself. The next morning, I got dressed and went straight to the 2nd floor. I knocked on every single door on the 2nd floor, and they were pretty much all women. Finally, this guy opens the door and he has a nose ring. I asked him if he'd been by my apartment, but he denied it. He basically acted like he had never seen my face before. He acted so well that I started doubting it was him, even though I could see he had a nose ring. He had a purple hoodie on, which covered his neck, so I couldn't tell if he had a tattoo. Apologized and went back upstairs. I decided to go to the gym once again. But as I'm working out again, I see the guy in the black hoodie outside the door. But this time I wasn't gonna let him get away. Ran to the door, and when I opened it, he was halfway gone. That's when I decided to chase him. Instead of running out of the building, he ran up the stairs. I knew exactly where he was going. Here's the problem. He was much faster than me. When I got up to the 2nd floor, he had basically disappeared. I knew that this guy lived on the 2nd floor. I went straight to his door and knocked. Of course, he didn't open. Stood there for a few seconds contemplating what I should do. Suddenly, a few doors down, a door opens. Out comes this really beautiful girl. She starts asking me if I was okay. That's when I broke down. I started to cry and I told her everything. She invited me into her apartment and she gave me a glass of water. Then she confirmed my worst fears. She told me she'd been having problems with one of her neighbors, that most of the girls on her floor were complaining about the same thing. Apparently, I wasn't the first person complaining to management about this one person. She showed me all the emails that she had sent management about this guy.
Story time on how I slept with my best friend's husband on their wedding day. Okay, so boom. I have a best friend and we've been best friends for 10 years. I love her and care about her, but I have one huge problem. I'm in love with her soon-to-be husband. It's complicated. But let's call him John. Rewinding 10 years back when I met my best friend, I also met John. He was actually my friend first and I really liked him. I told my best friend about him and wanted to get to know him more, so I invited him to come out to the movies with us. Well, by the end of the night, my best friend made a move on him and they ended up kissing. My heart was broken, but when I was in the car with my best friend, she said that we weren't dating yet and it was fair game. At that point, I distanced myself from him because I felt weird about the whole thing and they eventually started dating. About a year later, one day I was alone with John. And on this day, everything changed between us. Okay, so boom, like I said, about a year later, one day I was alone with John. He actually told me that I was the one he wanted, but thought since I invited him to the movies with my best friend and that she made the move, he basically thought I was passing him on to her, my friend. I told him, no, that's crazy. I liked you. And we both laughed and hugged it out, but that hug was pretty passionate. The chemistry and overall energy between us changed, but we never acted on it. Now, fast forward 10 years later, on their wedding day, we were all in the same hotel, but different rooms getting ready. When it was time for all of us to get ready, all the girls went to one room and then all the guys went to the other. My best friend sent me to her room to get a charger, and when I entered the room, John was there. I told him I was sorry that I barged in, and he was like, yeah, that's not a problem. But then he walked up to me and, okay, so boom, like I said, I told him I'm sorry for barging in, and he said, yeah, that's not a problem. But then he walked up to me and said, I don't know, I just can't help it. Every time I see you, I almost wish it was you. And I know y'all gonna hate me for this, but literally for 10 years, I've been fighting off my urges, but at the moment, I just couldn't. I was in love with him and he's not married yet, so fair game, right? Well, we ended up doing the nasty and it was very passionate. Then I went back to the girls' room and acted like nothing happened. I feel like shit, but I can't help but be happy that we at least shared that little moment together. I mean, y'all, I always liked him. We never acted on it again, but now I'm just wondering if I should say anything or should I just leave it alone and never do it again? What should I do, y'all?
Story time about how I got stuck in an elevator with my ex and we ended up doing the dirty. My ex and I broke up in 2020 during COVID. Disclaimers, not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. Our relationship was really toxic. You know, the usual. He was super controlling, jealous. He would try to control everything I did, who I would hang out with. And he even envied my career. After dating for 6 months, I told him that we should reevaluate our relationship. I actually had no intention of breaking up with him. I literally just wanted us to sit down and talk about our relationship, talk about what we wanted for it, and if we could see ourselves together in the future. Well, he took this as me saying that I wanted to be with other guys, so he instantly broke up with me and gave me no chance to talk. He told me I wasted his time, and that he had rejected really hot girls in order to stay faithful to me. I knew this was a sign that we shouldn't be together, so I simply let him leave. A few days after that, he started sending me messages on Instagram asking me why I was going out. I told him he needed to remember that he was the one that broke up with me, and that he had no right to ask me anymore what I was doing or who I was hanging out with. Then he sent me a drunk voicemail telling me that he would never find anybody like me, which he's totally right about, and for me to give him another chance. This is when I had to make a really hard decision. I chose to block him, delete his phone number, and delete him out of my life. I decided to work on myself, so I started going to the gym every single day. A few weeks later, I'm on the treadmill and I see my ex walk in. He knew that was my gym and he signed up to it. I won't lie, I was really flattered. The first thing he did was come up to me and try to strike up a conversation. I really had to resist the temptation to talk to him. I told him that right now wasn't a good time since I was working out. I started seeing him every single time I went to the gym after that. Our relationship had always been really toxic, so I wouldn't have put it past him to start stalking me. Even though I had done a lot of work to get over him, part of me still really liked him. Every time I would see him, I would get butterflies, and I was actually flattered by the fact that he was following me around, which I know sounds terrible. But every time he would try to talk to me at the gym, I would just politely tell him it wasn't a good time, which he surprisingly respected. So the gym I go to is actually pretty fancy. There's all these different classes, so I decided to sign up to a few. Well, the instructor of this class was really good looking. After every single class, the trainer would always try to talk to me. Every time he would pass by me at the gym, he would say hello and just talk to me. And of course, I would literally sit there and have 5-minute conversations with him, whether or not my ex was around. After about a week of me talking to the trainer, I get a message from my ex on Instagram. He starts asking me if I'm interested in the trainer, and of course I said no. I told him that he needed to leave me alone and stop watching me at the gym. That's when he confessed his feelings and told me that he was still in love with me, and that he would do anything to get back with me. Luckily, I stayed strong and told him that I needed him to respect my space. The following day when I saw him at the gym, he tried to give me a hug. It was super awkward and I actually told him not to. The trainer came up to me and asked me if everything was okay in front of my ex. My ex, of course, started telling him that he needed to mind his own business. I could tell that the trainer was jealous and I could tell that my ex was jealous. It was super awkward, but I felt really flattered. And it made me really happy that my ex was starting to see the value in me, although it is sad that it took this to make him realize normalize it. Luckily, things didn't escalate, but my ex pretended to leave the gym. When I left the gym later on, my ex was parked next to my car waiting for me. He tried to talk to me, but I just told him I didn't have time. That's when he went in for a kiss. I turned my face away, but he grabbed me and kissed me anyway. He told me that he wouldn't stop trying to win me back and that I was the love of his life. After he grabbed my face and kissed me, I told him that he needed to back off. He told me that he wouldn't stop fighting for me and that I was the love of his life. I got in my car and went home. The very next day, I decided to go to the gym earlier just to avoid my ex. But what do you know? 10 minutes after I arrived, my ex shows up too. I decided I would literally not even make eye contact with him just so that he wouldn't come talk to me. I did a 30-minute workout and I started heading out of the gym. To get to my car, I had to take an elevator down. I get into the elevator and as the doors are closing, my ex sticks his hand in.
Down there was to go ice skating. Now the issue is that I'm really good at ice skating. My boyfriend is not good at ice skating at all. Like, he barely knows how to skate. So a lot of the times when we go ice skating, I'll skate by myself for like 10 minutes and my boyfriend will just be like going around the ice rink really slow, like trying not to fall down, just so that I can skate for a little bit and then I can help him because I love ice skating. Anyways, so we get to the ice rink and me, my boyfriend, and two of my boyfriend's friends went with. So before we get on the ice, I tell my boyfriend that as soon as we get on, I'm gonna skate around for like 10 minutes and then I'll help him skate. He said, okay, that's fine, have fun. Cool, dope. So I get on the ice and I'm skating around for like 10 minutes. And after a while, I'm like, why haven't I seen my boyfriend? Where's my boyfriend at? So I look around trying to find him and then I see him skating with another girl. He was ice skating with some random girl. When I say my blood was boiling, I've never been this mad. So I go over to them and I like look at my boyfriend like, what are you doing? And he just gives me like this look. So I'm like, okay, come over here. We go to the side of the ice rink and he's like, yo, this random girl just came up to me and told me that she wants to help me skate. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, I've been looking for you this whole time. Like, she literally just randomly came up to me and said that she wanted to help me skate. He didn't want to seem rude, so we said, okay. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Whatever, like, whatever. But I will now help you skate. I will help you. Not her. Not her. So after that, me and my boyfriend are like skating around the rink a couple times. I'm helping him skate. We're having a cute little couple time. And all of a sudden, I see that little girl again. And I literally cannot believe she did this. Like, the nerve, the audacity. She skates on over to us and she's like, hey, do you want me to help your boyfriend skate? That's my job. As his girlfriend, that's my job. Like, honey, I want to know where you got the audacity from. So I tell her, no, it's fine. Like, I'm helping him. And she skates away. I'm thinking, this is the last of her. She won't do anything else. No, I was wrong. We skate around for like 20 more minutes and I was on my lady day, so I had to, you know, do some situating in the bathroom. So I tell my boyfriend, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go to the bathroom. He's like, okay, fine. I go to the bathroom. I come back out. My boyfriend is in the corner of the ice rink, like against the wall on the ice. And the girl's just standing there talking to him. And my boyfriend's just sitting there on his phone like, God help me. So I go over there and I'm like, hey, what are y'all talking about? This girl just looks at me and then gets off the ice rink and leaves. Who are you? And what's your problem? That is my boyfriend. And then my boyfriend basically told me that he was really weirded out and felt really uncomfortable. And nobody sent him hate. We've been dating for 2 years. He's not a cheat. This was not him. This was just some weird girl who didn't understand respect. Not my boyfriend's fault.
Am I the asshole for customizing my burger? For my niece's 10th birthday a few days ago, we went to a burger place. I'm pretty picky about food, so I thought it would be easier to just take along some of my own stuff. The actual meat is okay, but they do horrible and overly sweet brioche buns. They also have fancy named complex burgers, and it makes the food basically inedible. It is so disgusting. I ordered their most basic burger with just some lettuce, and had brought my own bread, some cheese, and some barbecue sauce. Nobody said anything at the time, none of the staff cared, and honestly I think the guys at the next table were pretty jealous. But afterwards, my sister told me that I was being a total asshole and ruined the evening and drew all of the attention away from my niece on her birthday. My niece didn't seem unhappy, and basically nobody commented beyond, haha, don't you want one of these fancy burgers? I got to eat food that was actually edible, and I don't think I was being an asshole, but I don't know. Was my sister just being weird, or does she have a point? Am I the asshole for letting my son drive to school despite his mum's protest? My son is 17 and a junior in high school. He got his license in October, but obviously there's a lot of restrictions. His mum, we're divorced, will not let him drive unsupervised, meaning she has to be with him. I let him drive my car to and from school and to school activities. She found out and demanded that I stop doing it. I told her that I trust him and he gets to be cool driving a Tesla to school, plus he gets a prime parking spot. Compounding the problem is that he apparently told her to piss off over something and she won't let him drive at all and said that I should follow suit. I told her that's between her and him. I don't want to get involved with my ex-wife's issues with our son driving as a means to control him. That's between them and I will not be adjudicating their conflicts, but am I the asshole?
Let's talk about the most manipulative color in all of color theory, in my opinion. Baker Miller Pink. So in the 90s, people got super obsessed with Baker Miller Pink. Basically, this guy came out and he was like, I did all this research and there's this one color, Baker Miller Pink, and it's shown to calm people the fuck down. It's super anti-anxiety, super anti-aggression, to the point where even colorblind people, when exposed to Baker Miller Pink, were shown to have the exact same results. They also became really tranquil and they also calmed down. It's just how impressive that color is. So immediately people were like, whoa, there's so much practical application to Baker Miller Pink then. So they started painting mental health facilities Baker Miller Pink. They started nicknaming it Drunk Tank Pink because all these jails painted themselves Baker Miller Pink. Even some college football teams started painting the visiting team's locker rooms Baker Miller Pink. And people got so hyped up about that they actually litigated against it. And now you have to have the same color locker room for visiting teams and home teams because the visiting teams felt that they were put at such an intense disadvantage because of the Baker Miller Pink. But the guy who was doing all this research on Baker Miller Pink neglected to mention a very key detail, which is that, yeah, the first 15 minutes of exposure to Baker Miller Pink, you do calm down. It does have a very tranquil effect. But after your body reaches equilibrium, it actually reacts negatively to Baker Miller Pink, almost like it resents the fact that it was forcibly chilled out. And you end up being way more anxious or way more aggressive than you were at the beginning before exposure to the color. So it totally negates the purpose of Baker Miller Pink, basically. But he didn't want to like say that part because that doesn't sound as cool. So he kind of like suppressed it, and it was already too late. So now there's all these jails that are Baker Miller Pink, and although, yeah, when you come in from intake, maybe the first 15 minutes, you're like, wow, this is a really tranquil jail environment as far as jails go, it ends up hyping you the fuck up, and it's actually probably a huge liability.
I, 29 female, spoke to my parents who ghosted me 5 years ago after my wedding, and have now reached out. My husband, 30 male, used to be my boss. About 9 years ago, I started working as his assistant. We spent about 2.5 years ignoring our mutual attraction until we gave in. We then went to HR, who reassigned me, and the whole thing was strictly above board from the time we began dating. I got pregnant about a year later, and my husband and I decided to just get married. While we'd only really been dating for about 1.5 years, we knew each other completely, loved each other, lived together, and there was a baby on the way. We knew how it would look, but I had to leave the company anyway due to problems with my new boss, so we didn't anticipate this causing any issues, except with my parents. They, 62 male / 57 female, have always been overprotective, so I knew they wouldn't like me dating my boss, and hadn't told them. But I had to tell them if I wanted them at my wedding. We decided to be mostly honest with them, about how it was strictly professional until it wasn't, how the second it got unprofessional we went to HR, how he had never taken advantage of me, but now we wanted to get married, and we wanted them there. We did not mention the baby because I felt that giving them that information in addition to the rest all at once would just break them. I was only about 4 months along when the wedding happened, so the bump was easily hidden by a flowy dress. The wedding itself went off without a hitch, and apart from my mother pulling me into the bathroom shortly before the ceremony to ask if I was sure about this, which I said I was, my parents seemed to take it well. The ceremony and reception were at 2 different venues, and we had to travel from one to the other, and my parents never arrived at the reception. I called them and got ignored, and then my brother called them and they told him that they were going home. I don't remember the exact reason they gave, but it amounted to them being tired and uncomfortable. I tried contacting them after the wedding, but found that I was blocked on everything except email, which I used to send them a long letter essentially saying that I'm an adult who made an adult choice, and I hope they can respect that. 5 years later, I have not heard from my parents since my wedding. My husband and I are not big in social media in general, but I recently posted something for our 5th anniversary in which I mentioned our 2 kids and 3rd on the way. Within a month of making this post, my parents left a voicemail saying they saw the post, and having had no idea that they had grandchildren previously, now want to meet them. I haven't responded. There have been a few follow-ups since, then asking why I haven't. I don't know what to do, but my gut instinct is that 5 years is too long, and it's about the kids, not about them respecting my choices or relationship. However, I can't help but feel that I am being unfair, and my brother agrees, because I told them in my mail that if they could learn to respect my choice in my marriage eventually, then we could talk. And now I'm retroactively applying a time limit. My entire family despises my fiancé, and I have to choose between them and her. Is she manipulating me, and is there something I'm not seeing? I met my fiancé when I was at a very low point in my life. We instantly clicked and had a whirlwind romance, and I proposed after 3 months and we are now engaged. I feel like my family has never approved of her, or particularly liked her. They are all very educated and work professional jobs, while she's a college dropout who works as a hostess. She's starting a venture of her own, and I'm funding it for her. The problem started with my sister-in-law and my brother. They told me that 3 months was too quick, that I should date her for longer. They also implied that she's a gold digger. They never used the term. They said this because she doesn't financially contribute. My fiancé isn't particularly fond of my sister-in-law, as sister-in-law is very rich and successful, and fiancé thinks that she is snobbish. The problem escalated when there was a family wedding and my fiancé wasn't invited. She is of a different race, so she accused my family of being racist and said this to my parents' face. My parents never expressed an opinion about her, but that was their tipping point. My sister-in-law and brother added to this and told them about my financial contributions to her ventures and other details about her relationship. My parents said that I am making the wrong decision. I told my fiancé this, and she lashed out. She messaged my sister-in-law and told her that she is a horrible person for trying to wreck our relationship. My sister-in-law once again communicated this to my parents, and they have refused to pay for and attend the wedding. My fiancé says that her family will accept me with open arms, and that we can get married in City Hall. She accused my parents of being elitists, and said that they only like my sister-in-law because she's educated and of the same race. I love my fiancé, but I feel like she's trying to manipulate me into cutting all ties. I don't know what to do, and I don't want to reach a point of no return with my family. Any advice will be appreciated.
To tell me all the painfully embarrassing things that happened with your crush.
I absolutely win this. Oh my god. This still keeps me up at night. I had the biggest crush on this guy, and I was at a friend's house, and he ended up coming over. I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my god, this is my one chance to impress this guy. And let me just preface this by saying I'm not working with much. I don't have a lot of talents, but I can do something. So I finally get him alone, and I'm like, this is it, now or never. I look at him, I'm like, do you want to see something cool? And he's like, yeah. And I lay on my back, and he's just looking at me like, what? And I start queefing. I let out a couple of queefs, and he looks at me, his facial expression changed. He looks at me, he goes, this is disgusting. He walks away, texts his mom comes, picks him up. I was so confused because I genuinely thought this was cool. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. I thought queefing on demand was cool.
Am I the a-hole for saying that if my parents have another baby, I want nothing to do with it? I know the title sounds bad, but hear me out. I, 17 female, have had a rocky relationship with my parents since my siblings, 10 male, 7 male, 3 female, 9 months male, were born. I was an accident baby when my parents were teenagers, and they have told me in arguments that I ruined their lives. However, this is not what the post is about. My parents are notorious workaholics and constantly accuse one another of cheating. It's stressful for everyone in the house, young ones included. All of my siblings have had paternity tests. Because they work so often though, it means I'm often left, for sometimes 48 hours, to care for my siblings alone. This has gotten so bad that the 9-month-old and 3-year-old sometimes cries for me instead of our actual mother. I cook for them, make sure they get to school on time and do their homework. I clean and play with them. The 10-year-old invites me to his football games, and I don't get time to do anything for myself. Well, last week me and my parents were arguing again. They want another baby to bring them closer together. I was furious and straight up told them that they didn't look after the kids they already had, and I just end up having to look after another one. I told them that if they have another baby, I want nothing to do with it, and they will be all on their own. They called me an a-hole and said I was trying to ruin their marriage and their careers. I spoke to Grandma about it, and while she sympathizes with my situation, she says I should be supportive of my parents trying to fix their marriage. She told me it was my duty as the oldest sibling to care for my younger ones, and I was being kind of an a-hole and should apologize to my parents, but I still don't think I am. So, am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for wanting to tell my stepdaughter's dad about the cameras my wife planted in his house while he was away? I, male 34, got married to my wife Claire 2 years ago. She has a 6-year-old daughter, my stepdaughter, that she shares custody of with her ex-husband Adam. So Adam has not dated anyone ever since he and Claire got separated. Claire always talked about how this was a good thing, because she believes that my stepdaughter is better off without a witch stepmom to boss her around and mistreat her. Then Adam started seeing his now girlfriend about 8 months ago. Claire wasn't happy about it. In fact, she was livid that Adam introduced my stepdaughter to his girlfriend so soon. Claire demanded meetings with Adam's girlfriend to test and see what kind of stepmom she will be for my stepdaughter. I didn't give it much attention because of the drama and always having mother-in-law involved as well. However, I very recently found out that Claire installed several cameras in Adam's house while he and his girlfriend were away on a trip. Claire had a key to Adam's house because most of my stepdaughter's stuff is there. Keep in mind that I found out by looking at the chat Claire had with mother-in-law, so she was in on it too. It irked me because that is a total breach of privacy. But when I confronted Claire, she said she did this because Adam's girlfriend was going to move in soon, and she wanted to see how she treats my stepdaughter. I told her this was wrong, but she said it was all temporary till Adam's girlfriend isn't clear. I still wasn't convinced and suggested she remove the cameras because of the huge legal troubles once Adam finds out. But she lost her temper on me, saying I should stay out of it, because I clearly don't care about my stepdaughter's well-being and happiness. But then she had no evidence or even reason to believe Adam's girlfriend might mistreat my stepdaughter. Claire said she just wants to double-check, and Adam does not need to know. But I disagreed and said that I will tell him if she won't remove the cameras, which made her lose it on me and get mother-in-law to shut me down and get me to stay in my lane. But I couldn't. Claire said if I tell Adam, then we're gonna have a problem, and urged me to mind my own business because Adam isn't more important than my relationship with her. So I shouldn't even entertain the idea of telling him and upsetting Claire, who is just trying to make sure her daughter's future stepmom isn't some witch stepmom in the making. I still want to tell him, but given Claire's reaction, I'm going to get hell for this, and it may not be worth it, since me and Adam aren't on good terms.
I, 21 male, have an older brother Dave, fake name, that has always been a jerk to me. There's only a 1-year gap between us, but he liked to beat me up when we were kids, and he always acted like anything that was mine was also his. He was also somewhat the golden child, which made me miserable, so no surprise, I moved out at 18. My uncle is a now retired police officer, and he took me in after I left home. He even hooked me up with a decommissioned Crown Victoria, and I absolutely love that car. I don't know why, but Dave hated the fact that I had that car. He drove 3 beater cars into the ground while my Crown Vic kept chugging along. Well, after his 3rd beater finally died when he drove it into a pole, he asked to borrow my car. I had a bad feeling and said I wasn't gonna do that. He called me entitled and said he needed a car to get to work. I told him to take the bus because I know how he drives and my Crown Vic was off limits. My parents called me after that and told me to just lend him my car, but I said I won't no matter what they say. I rely on the car and need it as well since it's my personal transportation. Dave wasn't the only one in the world with a job he needed to get to. My uncle congratulated me for standing up to them and gave me a high five. A few days later when I got off work, the car wasn't where I parked it. I called my brother's cell, but he didn't pick up. Then I called my parents and asked them if he took my car. They denied it, so I said I was gonna call the cops, and then they admitted he had borrowed it because he needed it. I told them he better bring it back right now or I'll have police looking for him. They called me a jerk and then phoned Dave to bring my car back. He showed back up in the parking lot in my car 20 minutes later. I demanded to know how he stole my car, and he held up a set of police Crown Victoria keys he'd bought online. Some were made universal. I told him if he ever stole my car again, I'd have him arrested. Then he had the audacity to ask for a ride home. I told him he made me wait in the December cold after stealing my car, so he could walk. He called me a jackass before I drove away. After that, my uncle installed a tracking device in the car. When Christmas Day came, I was celebrating with family like every year. The roads were cold and icy, so I had to be very careful while driving. By now you've probably clued in on the title. Yeah, Dave borrowed my car again during the Christmas party. Apparently, he decided he was gonna go pick up a friend and figured I wouldn't notice, but I did when I looked out the front window and saw my car was missing. I pulled up the tracking app and saw he was a few miles away, then called his cell to yell at him. Everyone in the party saw this and asked what was going on. I said Dave stole my car again, and my uncle confirmed it wasn't the first time. Dave told me over the phone to screw off and that he'd be back soon. I said he better not have been drinking, but he just hung up on me. Well, while I was watching the tracker app, the dots stopped and didn't move for a while. Soon we got a panicked call from Dave asking for help. He'd crashed the car because he couldn't handle the icy roads and he wasn't used to our rear-wheel drive vehicle. So, we piled in my parents' minivan and followed the tracker. We found Dave by the road and my Crown Vic nose deep in a snow-filled ditch. My uncle was furious as it was formerly a car of his department, and I was mad as hell at Dave for stealing my car again. My parents wanted me to let it go, but I said enough was enough and was gonna call police. Dave begged me not to because he really had been drinking before he set off and would get a DUI. I said he was gonna pay me back for my damned car then, or I'd sue him. Well, as luck would have it, police were already aware of the accident and were driving in to check on the scene. Someone else had called them, I guess. My parents tried to say that I was the one driving the car and they were just there to help me. I said that wasn't true and my uncle backed me up. In fact, one of the cops that was there recognized my uncle and they had a chat. Then they went to Dave and asked to see his license, which I then found out was suspended after he'd crashed his previous car. Then they breath tested him. He wound up with cuffs slapped in his wrists while my mother was crying and begging the police not to take him away. But the officer just said that she and my dad could get arrested too for lying to police. That shut my parents up and we got back in the minivan. The Christmas party was ended early and my parents drove me and my uncle home since he rode with me. They didn't say much to either of us the whole drive and just sped away as soon as we were out of their van. They nearly slipped off the road themselves doing that. My brother was let out of jail the next day and he looked so scared that he was practically crying. The cops there had roughed him up a bit while talking about prison and the crap they'd seen go on there. Dave had actually pissed himself during that and they let him take a shower. That's when my uncle started cracking up and revealed to us that his friends in the department never filed a DUI and just the charge for the suspended license, which was about a $600 fine. My uncle said he just wanted to teach Dave a lesson, and this would be the one and only time he'd ever get his help. Dave then apologized to me and said he'd pay to have my Crown Victoria fixed and would never touch it again. When it got pulled out of the ditch, the front end damage was actually minor. It needs a new front bumper, a headlight, and a grille. The damage was just superficial, thankfully. My parents have pretty much glossed over the whole incident and act like it didn't happen. Dave gave me the extra Crown Vic keys he'd bought online and said this has taught him a lesson he won't soon forget.
When did you know it was the last time you'd ever be hanging out with a friend? This was a relatively new friend that I didn't know that well, and they asked me to go out for a drink. So I said yes because it was right down the street. I show up, and not only are they already there, but they were also there with their partner, and you could tell that they had just freshly gotten into a fight. I realized this after I had started to sit down, so there was no bailing out now. Their partner has also just been glugging for a bit. Now this was kind of a fancy bar, so I just ordered the cheapest thing that they had on the menu, and the other two split a bottle of wine. No, I'm not a wine person, but they still poured me a glass. I was like, I'll just do a tasting glass, and they're like, oh my god, no! So they poured me a full glass of their wine. Again, I maybe had one sip of it. So I was not having fun, and I must have been there, I'm not kidding, 25 minutes before someone's like, let's do the bill. So they bring it, and my friend is like, oh, so we'll just split it 3 ways, right? And I look, my drink was $6-7. Their bottle of wine was almost $200. And I'm just staring at the full glass of wine.
Male found out my mom, 43 female, had been cheating on my dad, 43 male. I told my dad and took my dad's side, and now mom is a wreck. So yeah, long story short, caught my mom after I was at a friend's house. I was supposed to stay the night, but came home because I forgot something. Dad was working on New Year's, and saw mom kissing a guy on the couch who I knew was a colleague of mom's. I never was the angry type, but I remember just yelling at her and even threw the damn wine bottle she had on the table into the wall and called her all kinds of things. The colleague who I had known since I was a kid tried to calm me down, but I just ran up to my room, locked the door, and called Dad. Dad called my uncle, his big brother, and he came and picked me up and stayed with him until Dad came back. He sometimes has to travel for a couple of days, maybe once or twice every year. I still have not really talked with mom. I just get so angry when I see her, and honestly after the crap I called her, I think she's afraid to even speak to me. Mom just seems like a wreck and Dad is considering divorce, but Dad has agreed to counseling first. I am seeing a shrink before anyone asks, but after going there for almost 6 months now, I still just go home angry and just feel so angry every time I see mom. It's easier to pretend she does not exist at all. Like I said, we hardly talk anymore and I am afraid of saying something even more stupid if I have the conversation. Christmas this year, I quickly finished dinner and had no interest in presents or any of that Christmas stuff. Dad asked me to try to have regular Christmas, and I was trying, but sitting at the dinner table with our family pissed, with my uncle putting his hand on my shoulder once in a while to just calm me down. He must have seen how pissed I was, and realized I could explode at any moment, but I remained polite and thanked my grandparents for the presents, but I just said I was tired and went to my room early. It just felt so fake to be sitting there having a normal Christmas with the rest of the family present. The only person who realized just how I felt was my uncle. I don't know what to do, sick of being angry all the time.
Am I the a-hole for leaving everything I own to my goddaughter instead of my daughter? I, 45 female, divorced my ex-husband when my daughter Kelly, 21 female, was around 12, after I caught him cheating for the second time. Literally everyone was against it, and I knew the in-laws wouldn't like it because they're traditional conservatives who didn't want to deal with a public scandal. But it was hurtful to me that my own family was trying to pressure me to stay in the marriage in order to not lose access to the money and perks my ex had provided. Examples. While we were married, my ex helped my brother get a nice job with a high salary and nice benefits, paid off my sister's credit card debts, and bought my parents really lavish gifts. The first time I caught him cheating, I wanted out back then, but my family convinced me to forgive him, and that I owed it to Kelly to fight for her to have the stability of a two-parent household. My daughter was only a few weeks old at a time, and I was in a very vulnerable state. So I agreed and felt so stupid when my ex did it again. But this time there wasn't a "you weren't performing your wifey duty since you got pregnant" excuse anymore. And this time I wasn't going to be deterred and continued with the divorce. In truth, I wanted to keep Kelly out of this as much as possible. But my in-laws and my own parents poisoned her against me by painting me as a hypocrite for telling her how important forgiveness is, but that I wasn't willing to forgive Daddy even when he was really sorry. I was distraught. I honestly don't think I would have made it through if it weren't for my best friend Tina, who was my rock. In the end, I got a nice settlement and some alimony, but didn't get custody. I tried my hardest to still be in Kelly's life, but by the time she was a teen and she was fully convinced that I was the bad guy and told the courts she didn't want to see me anymore, I was heartbroken, but kept reaching out. During that time, I also managed to go back to school. I was studying accounting and managed to get a high-paying job of my own and have a nice life for myself. The same can't be said for my ex, who was sued by a former employee and fired by his company. Because he was so embarrassed, my ex burned through his savings trying to keep up his lifestyle, which included Kelly's college fund. Suddenly, she wanted contact again. And I won't lie and say that I wasn't hurt at the idea of her only wanting contact was for my money. I'd agreed to pay for her to go to grad school on the condition that she signed an agreement that she won't contest my will where I'm leaving most of that I owned to Tina's daughter, Laura, 18 female. The few relatives that I'm still on good terms with think that this will damage any chance at rebuilding a relationship with Kelly, and that I should just split everything equally. However, I don't want to have the type of relationship with Kelly that I feel like I have to pay for. Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for refusing to do a DNA test? My dad found out my mom was cheating, and she won't say with who or when, but we know it's likely around the time she was on a stay-at-home mother. The thing is, she had all of us, 2 brothers, 1 sister, around the same time, so any of us could not be my father's. He's divorcing my mother and wants us to take a DNA test to prove we're his children. Otherwise, he isn't paying for our college. He promised to do so before this, and all of us have been counting on it. My sister, oldest, did a test because she was confident she was related to our dad. She was likely pre-cheating. She looks the most like him, so I was pretty sure she was. She's also in college and is relying on our dad, but he's going to keep paying because of the results of the paternity test came back positive. I have a feeling I'm not my dad's biological kid, since I don't look anything like him, and people even commented I don't look like the rest of my family. I'm terrified because I think he's upset enough that he won't talk to me anymore, and definitely won't be paying for my college. I don't want to take the paternity test because I don't want to know. But if I don't, I probably won't get college paid for. The money isn't in a college fund, but set aside as investments my dad has. It isn't going to my mom in the divorce proceedings probably. I don't know how things will go, and I'm starting college in September. I stupidly picked a pretty expensive school because I thought my dad would pay for it. I said it was okay, but now even if my mom was willing to, I don't think she can afford it. I'm so mad at her and my dad for putting me in this position. I've told him I'm not doing the test and he said that's okay, but he will just assume I'm not his, and not have anything else to do with me once since I'm 18 already. I'm living with my mom but not talking to her because of this. Am I the a-hole for saying my parents should have stopped having kids when they started realizing they're all autistic? So I'm 16 female, I'm the oldest of 8, and the youngest 6 have a combination of autism and oppositional defiance disorder. If you have ADHD, and 4 out of the 6 are nonverbal with high support needs, I'm expected to help out, and have pretty much been emotionally neglected since age 6, when my parents started popping out more kids. So, due to everyone's sensory issues and for the sake of routine, Christmas hasn't been done in our house since I was 8, and that includes for me. Birthdays aren't really done either, and my parents spend so much time trying to keep everyone under control that myself and my normal brother 7 male miss out on just about everything. Last Saturday was my birthday, and I stupidly decided to ask my parents for something I've been wanting for a while, but I don't get an allowance and can't work due to helping out at home, so I can't save for it. It's not expensive, but it is out of my price range. They said no, expectedly, and reminded me for routine's sake we don't do birthdays in this family. I said I know, but maybe we could keep it to the 3 of us and do something away from them for once. They said no, and that I need to tailor my life to suit theirs, unfortunately. I kind of snapped. It may be years of built-up resentment or because I was in a bad mood, but I said that I don't understand why they keep having kids just to make their neurotypical kids suffer more each time. They should have stopped after they had 2 diagnosed with autism. Neither parent is talking to me right now, and I'm starting to believe I was the a-hole and made an ableist remark. Am I the a-hole?